In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to shade geometric forms using Photoshop, and these principles can be applied to Procreate, although you're going to have to do this in Photoshop because it's going to make your life a lot easier in doing this project, which really is more of an exercise, okay? So anyway, as you can see, this is what we're going to be doing. We're also going to be adding texture to these shapes so that they can look like they're made out of metal, or in this case down here, made out of wood. Okay, so let's begin. I have uploaded a file that you're going to need to download called shadingexercise.psd. You're going to need to download that and open that. And when you open it, it's going to look blank. Okay, and you're going to have a background layer, and you're going to have layer 1. And you need to work on layer 1. The thing is that you should set up your palette so that you can kind of work like what I have here. I have my paths palette over here because actually this file contains all these different paths. And so if we click on the first one, which is cube, it'll show up like this, okay? Now, mind you, this will print. If we were to save this as a JPEG or even Photoshop file and open it again, we wouldn't see this because this is a path, okay? And paths are great because you can use these to make selections fast, and these are made with the pen tool, okay? And when you make a path, you have the option of making it into a shape. The only thing and the reason why I didn't do that is because when you make shapes with your paths in Photoshop, it makes a separate layer for each shape, okay? So that's why I have these as just paths versus shapes. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to need to get the selection tool, and the keyboard shortcut for that is A. And we're going to select one side here. And this side, we're going to shade. We're not going to shade it. We're going to make it a flat value, okay? We'll shade it after I put in all my flat values. And I'm going to make this slightly darker. And I'm going to explain why in just a second here. I'm not going to fill it yet because I need to go over here to my paths palette. And as you can see, I've got this shapes side selected, okay? And we need to go to this little dotted circle icon, and this will actually turn it into a selection. So it says load path as a selection. There we go. And so now that's loaded as a selection and we're on layer 1, we're going to hit Alt Delete or Option Delete, and that will fill that, okay? We're going to go to the next one, select it, and I'm going to load the selection for this, and we're going to lower this to, let's say, about, I don't know, 30 maybe. Maybe not. Maybe do 35. Or I got 37. 37 is fine. We just wanted a lighter value, okay? And then we'll go to the top one here and do the same thing. And then load the selection. Lower the value. I'm using my grayscale sliders. And in case you don't know how to do this, this is your color palette in Photoshop. And it's set for HSB, RGB, and you can view it in any way, but we're going to be using grayscale, okay? So grayscale sliders. And now that I've done that, we'll hit Alt-Delete. Okay, now we've got a basic cube that looks somewhat three-dimensional because each side is a different value. Now, when we think about shading, we have to actually, and I just clicked down below here, so I turned off these paths, and I'm going to hit, I'm going to deselect, okay, that's this, so that we don't see any of the selections. Just look at this for just a second. And what I want to explain is, when you shade an object, you should think about the light source and where it's coming from. So for these examples, I'm thinking about having the light source coming down from the upper left-hand side, coming down onto this cube, okay? This will give us the greatest diversity as far as value, thinking about how the light hits this thing. Because if light's coming down, then the top shape right here is going to be the brightest. this side's going to be the darkest because light can't curve around, okay? And this side's going to be, a middle value. And so it's good to think about, what direction the light is coming from. And usually when I shade objects or shade things, I think about upper left or upper right. Sometimes I'll do straight down, but that gets a little boring. But if you're trying to do something dramatic, it works. Sometimes I'll shade things from up underneath. But for this exercise, we're going to either think of top left, top right. Okay, so now that I've got these just basic values in there, we're going to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. And so I'm going to use my Magic Wand tool, which W is the keyboard shortcut for that. I'm going to click on this side here. And I'm going to get my brush tool. Okay? And we'll go to our brushes here. And I have a bunch of brushes already loaded up here. And we'll get into loading up brushes and all that in a moment. But let's go to the soft round brush. Okay? So we've got a soft round brush. Right now, we see a target. That's because I have the caps lock on. If I take the caps lock off, you can see the brush shape. Okay? So it depends on what you're looking for, but I usually like the brush shape, so it lets me know. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to do a little minor shading on this, and I'm going to hit the D key because that's the default foreground and background. That's the keyboard shortcut for that. And what I'm simply going to do, I'm actually using my mouse. I could use my Wacom tablet, but this is going to be so simple for this one that I can use my mouse. What I'm going to do is just hold down my Shift key and pull down. Now that's too dark. All right. What we want to do is we want to lower our opacity. And the way to lower our opacity quickly is we hit the numbers on our keyboard. So I want to lower the opacity down to 30. And I'd like to lower the flow down too. So I'll lower the flow down to, let's say, 50. And to do that, you have to hold the Shift key and then hit the 5 key, and it will do it. Now let's do this. It's much more subtle. Okay? And here's the deal. I see a lot of students, and they shade. And I'm getting my Wacom tablet right now. And I'll see them just kind of go back and forth, and just keep shading something. Really, if you kind of know what you're doing, and if you think in terms of what needs to get done, you don't have to do so much. So first I think about in terms of the opacity and the flow and the size of the brush, and then just make one swipe, and boom, it's done. Okay? If I want it just a little darker, then I would do one more time. Okay? But I think this one works best. Okay? Now, what's happening here, and why I'm shading this a little darker, is so that I can make this corner come forward. All right. By doing this, it makes the corner come out more. And why this side is a little lighter is, light, as I said in the beginning, light goes in maybe I haven't said this. Light goes in a straight line. Okay? Light goes in a direct line. It cannot curve. So it can't curve around this corner. And so this represents reflective light that's bouncing. And so a lot of times you'll get reflective light on the opposite side, so it will actually kind of make it lighter on that side. So this gives us a little bit more depth. Okay? So let's go to the next side here. I'm going to hit the W key to bring up the Magic Wand. And you know what? I could probably use that same value, or if I hit my Alt key while my brush is on, it turns into an eyedropper briefly. And I can click on this. And then I'm going to hold down my Shift key and just go straight down. Actually, you know what? We're going to raise the value on that. So I'll undo that Command Z and go up to maybe 80% opacity. And boom. Okay. So now this side is a little darker and this side's a little lighter. So the greatest contrast is here. And by having that like that, it just makes it feel like it's coming forward. Okay. And this is just a basic way of making things look more three-dimensional. Now let's go to the top here, hit the W, okay, and we're going to pick, maybe this value here, and we're going to go across, something like this. Okay, I didn't even hold down my Shift key when I did that. And now the lightest part of that is here. And we'll hit the deselect, Command D or Control D, depending on what computer you're using. And see, this creates a much more in-depth cube. All right, very simple. So let me keep going, okay? So once you do that, then we can go to our layers palette. We'll make a new layer, and we'll turn off this layer. And if you want to, we can layer this one cube or box, okay? And we'll kind of turn it off by clicking on the eye. Go up to the layer 2. Make sure you're selected that. Go to the your path tool and hit the sphere, or not hit it, but click it. And then come down here and click, load path as selection. And we're going to select, I don't know, I see 57 is probably good. Anywhere in the range of 50 to 65 is good. And so, I'm going to hit shift, or not shift, I'm going to hit alt or option delete, and that will fill that, okay? Now, while it's still selected, I'm going to shade it. And for this, we're just going to, we're going to think in terms of the light source coming down. We can keep it coming down from the same direction. So if our light is coming down from this direction, then the shadow is going to be on this side, okay? And if our light is coming down from this direction, then the shadow would be on that side. So you got to think in terms of those things when you shade. I'm going to kind of try to keep these all consistent, because if you're working on an illustration or concept art, you want your light sources to be consistent throughout your image. And so if your light's hitting one object one way, unless there's a different light source coming in, all the other objects, all the other shapes, all the other things in your image needs to be shaded accordingly, okay? So let's just hit the D key to bring up the foreground to black, and then we're just going to swing around like this. And it's very simple. If it doesn't go right, you hit Command Z and just do again. So that's nice. Very nice. And we don't need to do too much there. Because like I said, I've seen a lot of students, and they'll just kind of keep going over and over and over. Now, if you want it darker, yeah, you can do that, if you need it darker. But I think this is okay. Now, let's make this lighter. So we'll hit the X key to bring up, so we swap the foreground, the background color. I'm going to make my brush a little smaller by using the left bracket on my keyboard. And I'm just going to hit a dot here. Okay, now I'm going to make it let's make it just a little larger this time. And hit it again. And therefore, see that? That's a fairly nice sphere. Now, the only thing is I'd like reflective light to come around. Because if this was a sphere, light would curve around. If we want to, we can make this side a little darker. That's the other thing I could do. Hit the X key and make this just a little darker there. And then I would actually hold down my Alt key, Option key, to bring up the eyedropper, click over here, and then to show reflective light, we just do this. I hit undo just because I didn't like it. But you shouldn't have to be, doing a lot. You just want to try to get it so that it looks decent like that. And say I hit another time there. We'll hit deselect to look at it. And say that's how you do a sphere. Okay? Very simple. And you need to think about applying this stuff to like other things like faces and or head shapes and different things, any kind of shape that's kind of sphere-like. All right, so let's continue on. I'm going to make a new layer, turn this one off. We can call that one sphere, okay, or ball. Okay, so now we got a new layer. We're going to go to this cylinder. All right, so if we're going to, we'll start with this shape here. I'm selecting it with using the selection tool, not this selection tool, but the path selection tool. I want to make that clear in case you're in here, you're watching this, and things are not working for you. A key will actually bring it up. All right, and you've got to be on that path. So now we've done that. Now we're going to load that selection very simply. I'm going to keep it the same value. Okay, and then I'm going to go and load up the top part. So we'll click on it, and we're lighting the value somewhere. I just hit 31, and we're going to load the selection, okay, and then hit Alt Delete, okay, and then we can click down below here, and it'll turn off our path so we don't see those. And now we can start shading. And I'm going to go and shade this part down below here. I'm going to, since it's one flat color, we can select it with the magic wand, which is W is the keyboard shortcut. And for this is really simple to shade. Okay, so if we have light coming down from the same angle, and then we would have a shadow on this side, somewhere around here, okay? On this side, that is. And so I'm going to hit the D key to bring up, so I have black in my foreground color. And I'm going to just hold down my shift key and drag down, and boom. I didn't have to do too much. Partly because my opacity is really high. It's at 80%. My flow is, halfway there. And that's all I really need to do, okay? Now let's go over to this other side here. We'll hit X, and let's lower the opacity, let's say to 50. And we're going to do the same side here. Okay, so that's good. See that? I didn't mean to say the same side. We're going to do the opposite side and pull that down, hold down the shift key as we drag the mouse. Well, I have the mouse on, but you'll have the Wacom tablet. And it's that simple, okay? A lot of times I'll be working on my laptop and I'm using my trackpad to shade things with, because once you know how to shade things, it's pretty simple. All right, so I made my brush a little smaller. Let's bring up my opacity maybe to 60. All right, hit the 6 key, and then we're going to aim for somewhere in the middle here, but up high. Get up past the shape and hold down the shift key and go straight down. Boom. Now that's shaded. Now, the only other thing I want to do is I'm going to get the magic wand and see if okay. Now, here's the deal. These values are so close. Now, I could try to lower. Well, my tolerance is already low at 5%. So, if the magic wand's not going to do it for you, we could try to lower the tolerance. I'm going to lower it to 1 and just see if it will. Yeah, see, it still catches something. All right. So, anyway, what I was going to say is, that's why it's good to have your paths. Because now we just go over to the path here and select that path and then load that selection. So if those values are too close, like they were there, that's what you do. Okay? So now let's hit X, so that brings up the foreground color to black. And then we're going to hold down the shift key. And opacity 60%. I'm going to bring it down to 30, let's say, and just take one little swipe. We just want it a little darker back there. Okay, I'm going to come over here, click off the path by clicking below here, and then do Command D. And so this looks more three-dimensional. And by doing the top, like I didn't go too extreme, I just got a little darker, and it's coming a little lighter because it's coming forward, okay? And so the greatest contrast is right in here. So that's how we make that look more three-dimensional, okay? So now, let's go and do another one. And so you can name this cylinder. And then we're going to make another layer. Turn that off. And we got a cone. Now, cones are a little harder to shade. And the reason why is, and I just loaded the selection there, as I've done other things, is because of that point and the way our brushes are set up, okay? And I might be able to use a different shaped brush to, like one of these. I haven't thought about using that yet. But I'm going to bring down my opacity down to, let's say, 60. We'll do Alt-Delete. I mean, not opacity. I meant my value, okay? So now, let me go and hit the D key, so that brings it to black. I am going to try one of these. I didn't try this in the earlier, when I was playing around with this. And let's just see. So for this, what we're going to do is click once outside on top, and at an angle, we're going to pull down our brush here, and then hold down the shift key after we do that. So we click once, and then we do that, and then we'll actually put in, it will actually shade that all the way down like that. I just undid it because I want to raise that opacity up to maybe 70, let's say. Okay, I try to hit that angle a little bit better this time. Much better. Okay, so I like that. That's a lot better. I think that's going to work well. Okay, and, I'm going to actually get my Wacom pen or Wacom pen. And, I turned this on because this is actually deals with, if we scroll over this slowly here. This has to do with the pressure, okay? So now let's hit the X key. I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. So I hit the X key because I wanted to bring the white to the foreground. Or if you do D, you'll see black on top, then hit X. There we go. Just to do that quickly. All right, now we're going to do this, kind of go in the opposite direction like this. Okay, too small. So now, and plus, the reason I've got too small is because I've got this turned on. Not bad, much better. Okay, so I'm going to take this off and see. Because like I said, I'm just playing around here. All right, one thing is our opacity's really, well, our opacity's good. I'm going to bring it up to 80, actually. Make this a little smaller. I might have to use a different brush. Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to bring it up to 90. And I'm going to do it again. Go up. All right, that's not bad. See, it's better to do it kind of slowly. All right, and then let's make it smaller here. We'll bring up the flow to, let's say, 80. So I hold down Shift and hit the 8 key. And we're going to do this. Do it again. And so it gets that so it looks much better, okay? Now, I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to go to just the soft round brush. All right, and I'm going to try it one more time here. So, boom. Boy. Make that a little smaller. I'm going to lower my opacity down. And I'm just playing around with this brush here. Boom. Oh, that looks good. That really does look good. We kind of got a reflective light going on. Now, if we want to get this darker, it's a little hard to do. It really is. You know, I might want to do this pressure. And hit X, and then we'll go down and click. Yes, it does that. But if we hold down, I'm gonna get the soft brush with opacity, make it larger, and then I'm just pulling down. I'm not holding down the Shift key. And see, I can darken that up just a little bit. I'm just using it like that different brush so that, because I want the tip to be, in order to make this look good, we don't want black overlapping over on this point here, okay? So that's why I keep doing this. All right, so that's shaded. I was just kind of being a perfectionist there. We got reflective light coming around that. So now let's go on to our next shape here, and we'll come back to our layers. All right, and we'll call this one cone first before we make the other layer. All right, make a new layer here, and so the next shape I have is this one. I call it the cut cylinder. It's kind of like a block of cheese that's been cut in half, okay? Now we'll hit the Command D so we don't see the cone selection anymore. And we're going to start off here. We'll start with this side, and we'll load the selection. And we'll go to our color palette and select maybe, I don't know, I got 63% black there. We'll hit Alt-Delete, okay? We'll come over to this side here. We'll do this same thing, load the selection, but lower the value down to maybe 40. Okay, we'll hit the top side. I'm using the A key. I mean the selection for the paths. So just to let you know, I have to change that. Okay, and we'll do. I mean, in order to select these paths, and so let me continue on. We'll go down to maybe 25. There we go. All right, now we'll click down below this. So now you see what's happening. And we'll do Command D for the moment. So now we see this basic form here. All right, so same thing here. For right now, I mean, we could just load up the path if it's easiest for you. I just use the magic one, which is W as a keyboard shortcut, because right now they're flat values. And so it will easily select those. All right, and my tolerance is already down to 1, so it should be very easy to select. So now we're just going to go to our soft round brush. We'll hit the D key, so that it brings up black as a foreground color. And lower, let's see here. Let's just go through this. We'll just hold down the Shift key and do this. It's too dark. I'm going to make my brush a little larger. So I did undo. Let's lower the opacity down to, let's say, 30. Maybe I go down to well, first of all, it's the flow being so high, but I'm going to keep the flow at 80 for the moment. And so I went down to 20% opacity, okay? So in case you don't know, opacity, of course, deals with, how opaque the color is coming that you're painting. And flow, my students couldn't understand that at the Art Institute. I had to teach them that flow has to do with how much color's coming out at once, okay? And so the flow is at 80%. I'm going to lower the flow down to maybe 40, okay? And bring up the opacity to, let's say, 40. And hit the X key. And now let's select this other side here. I'm going to hit W for a moment so I can select that. W brings up the magic wand. Go back to my brush, make it smaller. So now my opacity and flow are set at 40 and 40. And I'm just going to do that. Now, if I want to get a little bit lighter, we can do it one more time here. Boom. That looks good. Okay. Now, if we try to select the top here, oh, it did it. Sometimes it won't, but right now the opacity was the tolerance is so low, and none of those values are the same, obviously. So let me get my brush again, make it a little larger, and we're going to select, I'm going to use my Alt Option key to bring up the eyedropper, select that value there, and just kind of go straight across like this. Actually, I'll make the brush just a little bit larger. Okay, maybe go second time. Because we just want to darken it just a little bit. I'm going to hit Command D. So it actually brings it so it makes it look like it goes back in space. Okay, so that's why I shade that just a little bit there so there's more contrast here. And if we want to, we could shade this other side a little darker, and we'll go over to it. I'll go down to our cut cylinder on the pass and hit the A key so we get the selection. We'll load that selection. And we'll hit D, so we get black coming up. And I'm just going to maybe make this just a little, don't want to go over it twice. I'm going to click off this button here because this will make the brush a little just stable. Because it'll be the same, it's not going to be based upon the pin pressure. So that's why I clicked off of it, okay? So, now that's done. Command D. And so we can go and make another layer here, but we'll call this one Cut Cylinder. And by the way, you'll be submitting your Photoshop file of this, okay? So now let's go to our dome shaped cylinder, okay? And we could just call it a dome if we want to. But so if we go and select the whole thing, if we go and just hit this is what happens. We want to select the whole thing, but the problem is you have this intersection here, and if we were to fill that, that's what it would look like. And I used to have my students at the Art Institute do that all the time, and I'd have to go back and show them how to select this the correct way. So hit Command D. So how we select this is very simple. Let me go to the right shape here. All right, so we hit the A key so we can select the top portion, and we'll load it. And then we'll go over and select the bottom portion, and then hold down the Alt key or Option key and click again on this. So we're clicking on this where we're loading the selection, and this pops up. So it says Make Selection. We want to add to the selection. So now it's one selection, okay? And you saw there's other things we can do in there. So now, and we'll just click down below this so I'll turn off the paths. And we'll do Alt Delete, and that fills that. Okay, so this one's pretty simple. I'm going to use my soft round brush. I turned off the pressure on that. We're going to hit the D key so black is on top. It's in the foreground color. And we're going to click somewhere on this side. So if our light's coming down from here, our shadow's going to be over here. So I'm going to just click here and then hold down my Shift key and click again. And I think we'll do it one more time here. Not bad. Now the other thing too, sometimes I'll just undo and just look and just raise the opacity up to 80 and see. Yeah, see, that's much better. I'm gonna just so I'm not do it all over again. That looks pretty good. We could actually probably come over here just a little bit and do that if we want to make that really intensely dark, and just shade that a little bit further over. All right, so next what we're going to have to do is we definitely are going to have to curve this as we're lightening this up. So hit the X key so that it brings white to the foreground. We're going to lower the opacity down to, let's say, 40 for the moment. So I hit the 4 key, and then I'm going to just do this. Very simple. I'm going to make the brush a little larger. I'm going to undo that. Just a little larger brush. Okay, so in order to make it larger, I'm using the brackets, by the way. Okay, so it's a much faster way to make it larger. I use the right bracket. Now that's good. I like that. So what I'm going to do is make this a little smaller and do it again. Okay, and then we'll make it just a little bit more smaller one more time using the left bracket. And we're going to raise the opacity all the way up to maybe 90. And do that. Whoops, I only need it once. Yeah, undo. There we go. So I'm just playing around here with the angle. Okay? And so that looks very well. And see, by shading that in the middle there, we don't even have to worry about the reflective light, because it's already there. But it's done. A lot of times I've seen people just take so long to shade basic geometric forms. It should not take you long at all once you know what you're doing, okay? So now, let us go, and we're going to call that one, I'll just call it Dome. Okay, and then make a new layer, turn that one off. All right, so we're down to this curved surface. That's what I call it. And it's kind of like a roller coaster. It's kind of like a hillside or a ribbon. So let's first of all, we'll load up this side and select that. So again, I have to use the A key to bring up my selection tool for that, and then I go down there. And then let's go to, 64%. We'll hit Alt-Delete, fills that. Now let's go to the other one, the other shape. We'll load it up. Now, if we fill it, it's going to do this. But remember, if we hold down our Alt key before we select it, all right, so let's go over here. I just undid. So right now what I'm going to do is just select this one shape here, okay? This needs to stay selected, this first shape, okay? Because what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the Alt key when we load this selection, and that gives us the option to subtract. Okay? Now that doesn't do what I wanted to do. All right. So let me go back here. I've been flustered by some issues today with my tutorial that I was preparing for, so that's why I'm a little like So here's what we're going to do. All right. We can load this up. But then we're going to need to come over here, select this, and then hold down our Alt key and subtract from selection like that. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. Okay. I'm actually just a little tired right now. I've been up early, so that's the other thing. Okay, so before we start shading anything, we're going to fill this with, let's say 42. Okay. And we can click down below here so on the path, so the paths are turned off. So if this is kind of, let's say a road or something, or a slide, that's the other thing could be, we need to think in terms of how the light hits this and where it would show up. So the top portions of this is where the light's going to really be more prevalent, okay? It's going to really show up on this side and on this side. Down in here, it's going to get a little darker. So if we wanted to, we could actually, let's make our brush a little larger. We'll hit D, so that brings up the black as a foreground color. My opacity right now is 90, so I'm going to lower it to, let's say, 30 for the moment. And this time we're going to click out here and click down below here, but hold down the Shift key. And it's all about getting the angle correct. The angle needs to be parallel to the ends, which is kind of hard to do. I'm going to do it again so it makes it just a little darker. There we go. We don't want it too dark. So I'm going to lower the opacity down to 20 and try it again like that. There we go. Okay. Now, let me lower the brush size, and then we're going to hit X so it brings white forward, and I'm going to click here and click there. All right, we need to raise the opacity. So I undid it, hit the 5 key so it's 50%, and there we go. So we want this, and I'm going to go up even a little higher here, 70%. There we go. Now this has to be parallel to this line right here. So that's what we're looking at. Okay? And so that's why you see me undoing this, because I'm trying to get it the best I can. Okay, we'll do the same down here. Click out there, hold down the shift key, click here, and it's got to be right at the right angle, okay? And we got to be towards kind of like the top there. There we go. Because we want these in the same location as far as that curved surface, so that it looks like the light is hitting that correctly. All right, now we'll go and shade this part right here. Fortunately, because my tolerance on my Magic Wand is down to 1, nothing else matched on that side, so I was able to load that quickly. Let me make this a little larger. X, we'll bring up foreground color, hit the X key, and this, I'm going to lower the opacity down to maybe 30. Make my brush just a little larger, and just do that. And then maybe I might want this just a little lighter back here, so I'm going to hold down my Alt key, select a little lighter value, and do the same thing. So I hold down my shift key and just drag, and we just want this subtle. I'm going to deselect, and now we see what this shape looks like shaded. Okay. All right. So one more shape, and then we can get into texturing. We'll call that, I don't know, curved or ribbon or whatever you want to call it, curved surface, something, so we know what it is. All right. So this one, I call it the funnel in the funnel because it's an unusual shape I made. It's kind of reminiscent of, if you've ever seen a lava lamp, they come with these stands that are like this. Okay, so this shape, we're going to start shading it, or not shading it, we're going to start filling flat values first. So we'll start with the top one here, this one right here. And so I'll select that, and then I'll load the selection. And this side's going to be darker, okay? It's going to be the darkest right now. So we'll hit Alt-Delete. Whoops. Got to make sure we're on the layer. See, I didn't make a new layer. All right, make a new layer, okay? And then see, I am getting tired. There we go. All right, so now let me come down to this middle shape here. And here's the deal. If the light's coming down, and you think about this in terms of like a cliffside, let's say you're on a cliff and where light would really hit this side. It'll hit this side also, but a little less. And this side, you got more ambient light hitting it because, just the angle. You might get some sunshine on that, but it's going to be darker than these other two sides. Okay, so we'll lower the opacity, not the opacity, but the value here in my color palette. And we got to load the selection. Whoops, I actually did that. Undid that. So we got to load that selection. Hit Alt-Delete. There we go. Okay, now let's go down to the next one. All right, load the selection and bring down the value down a little bit more. I did like 27. It doesn't have to be the same as what I'm doing. So it's something like that perhaps. All right, do Command D. All right, so, and then this top part, let's get this. This one's going to be quite a bit darker because of how the light's hitting, because in here it would be kind of dark and the light would hit on this side when we shade it. So I'm going to bring that up to maybe 72, and then we'll hit Alt-Delete. There we go. Now even that looks somewhat three-dimensional. Well, let's start shading. And we can start shading. Let's say we'll shade the bottom part here, okay? And we could either load the selections to the path or use our Magic Wand, okay? And first thing I'm going to need to do is, if the light's coming down this direction, our shadow is going to be on this side, okay? So get my brush, make it smaller, hit the D key so that makes the foreground black. The opacity set at 30, so I'm going to bring it to maybe 50. So 50% opacity, 40% flow. And then we're just going to click here, outside the shape, outside the selection that is, and click down here, and just angle it. That's not bad. Okay, I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to go down this way a little bit. There we go. That looks nice because I've got that reflective light over there, okay? Now, let's bring in a highlight. So we'll hit X. We'll bring up that. We'll swap the foreground background there. We're going to lower the size of my brush by using the left bracket. I'm going to click up here outside the selection and then down at an angle and hold down my shift key, and it's going to start to put in a highlight. We'll do it one more time here so it lightens up. Now, if we need to blend this a little bit better, we can always select in here. Anytime you're working on something like this, I'm going to undo. I'm going to click down in here. Much better. Because, if you're trying to perfect something, sometimes you don't want to be doing too much. You can always undo what you've done. I'll make that just a little darker. There we go. Okay. So that's not bad, because I'm going to keep going here and get to the texturing. Okay. So now, let me select, get the magic wand, select this, and same thing. Black on this side. So we don't need this too big. I did once. Okay, we'll do it again. I'm just holding down my shift key and going straight down. There we go. That looks nice. And then we'll have a little bit of a highlight here. So we'll D and X, since I wanted to bring white. I want to use white. There we go. That's good. Okay, now we'll do the next one. Okay, make the brush larger. Hit X so it brings the black to the foreground color. And we're going to go from here and hold down the shift key and do that. Whoop, too much. Go here. There we go. Okay, one more time so we make it darker. There we go. Oh, that looks nice. All right, now let me swap so that the white is in the foreground color. Make my brush a little smaller and come here and go there. And we don't need to go again because, again, there's not as much light hitting this shape because of the angle it's at and the way the light would be hitting it, okay? Now, if the light's coming up from here, it'd be the opposite, just to let you know, okay? And, of course, if it's coming this way, then, of course, it'll be opposite. The shadows will be on this side. So you just got to think about that when you shade things. Now, let's go to the inside area here. Whoops. Values are too close there, even at 1%. So let's go to our paths. Hit the A key so I can get to that shape, and then load that selection. And we're going to simply just make our brush larger here. X to bring the foreground color to make the foreground color black. And then I'm going to raise the opacity up to, say, 80. All right, so it's going to be darker on this side, but in here, if this is hollow, the light's going to hit on this side. Okay, so X to make white come forward to the foreground. We'll click here, hold down my shift key, and click there. Okay, we'll do it one more time. Go here. The angle is too extreme. There we go. And see, this looks halfway decent. I don't, if I got really picky, maybe I might go in there and refine some things. But this we'll click off of this. Do Command D, and there's our shape. Okay. So I hope this helps you out with shading these basic forms. Our next part of this is we're going to be adding texture, okay? And so the way we're going to have to do texture is by doing different layers and using different brushes. So I played around with this before, and that's one of the reasons why I'm tired, because I've been working on this all day to get ready for recording this. All right, so here, this is what we're going to be making it look like. This is called galvanized steel, okay? And, I'm going to upload some textures so you can see them. And I don't know if that's like more like a brushed steel effect. That one's my texture study I was just playing with. So if we open this up, you can see I was just playing around with different brushes to make different textures. And that's something that you should do. I mean, if you're not used to using the brushes and making textures, you should just open a blank document and play around with different brushes here. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But let me bring my layers and see, I've got another. This is the kind of a galvanized look there. Um, Now it's more brushed and it's also pitted. But I've got, yeah, see, that is definitely more, see, galvanized metal. All right. You may see that on certain pots and pans, cooking sheets or whatever. So what we're going to do is, in order to make that texture, it's pretty simple. Okay. Let me go back over to my file that I was working on. All right. And we could add that to this shape, or I'm going to just add to this dome shape. So I'm going to turn this off. I don't know. We'll just call this funnel. Okay. Just so that we call that something. So let's turn that layer off and go down to the dome shape. We're not going to paint directly on the dome shape. What we're going to do is we're going to go and make a new layer above it. Okay, because we're going to group these layers later. And then, so we got a layer above it. And I haven't even named it. I don't know if I will or not. But you can if you want to, because we could call this, galvanized. I don't know. You're going to type in texture. Okay. But the way we get a galvanized texture like that is so simple. And the best way to do this is by using our legacy brushes. Now, here's the deal. I've got my legacy brushes already loaded. I'm going to delete them right now because in case you don't know how to bring up, I've got all my brushes loaded here, but in case you don't have your legacy brushes up, you go over here on your brush palette and you go to legacy brushes. And it says restore, okay. Now, legacy brushes are really cool. I'm going to bring them up a little bit higher here so they're up above the dry media, or not. We don't want to put them inside, so I try to undo, but undo doesn't do anything to brushes. Okay, so let me go and make sure that, yeah, okay. Redo name change. Okay, so the reason I bring up my legacy brushes, they've got all sorts. Now, these are the brushes that used to be with Photoshop, but they've got all sorts of brushes. And you could play around here and get in here and see what kind of brushes they have. Some of them make some nice, you got dry media brushes. And I was playing around with getting textures out of, this charcoal edge, And let me just paint something for a second with this. We'll hit X and just say, see, you get some really they got some nice brushes that were made for Photoshop. I don't know if that one's kind of cool too. I'm just showing you some of the different brushes and the different textures you can get with them. And that's why I'm saying it's kind of good for you to play around and see what you can get out of things. I'm just curious about this one. Whoa, that's kind of neat. So anyway, what we're going to do is I could be in here all night showing you different ones. That's legacy. These are cool. M brushes, yes. They got snake skin in here. I mean, you got cross hatching, you got dry brushes. So, it's just good to become acquainted with what brushes there are out there. And there's just so many in here. But what I'm going to do to get this galvanized one, I'm sorry for taking so long, is we're going to go to our square brushes. Okay? And we're going to pick a brush. Doesn't matter which one because it's not going to be big enough. So we're going to have to hit the left bracket on our keyboard to enlarge that brush a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to actually go to our brush settings. And I'm going to play around with it here. I'm going to space it out. It gets spaced out here. We're going to go to shape dynamics. And we're going to play with angle. And we can actually set that to brush. So pin pressure, that is. So I might have been calling that, well, it's the Wacom pin pressure, that is. And I'm just playing around. See, the more you change it, the more it changes that. We're going to do size. We're going to do the pin pressure for size. But the minimum diameter is going to be a little larger than that because it's too small, so I'm going to bring that over a little bit. All right, so now we can go to scatter. And under scatter, we're going to scatter this, okay? And then we're going to raise the count. Okay? We could do this to pin pressure. We can also do both axis, so it does that. The count we can bring up if we want to, pin pressure. Okay. I'm just bringing over the count a little bit more. And let's just see what we get. See, it does that. Okay, undo that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a layer mask. So the easiest way to do that is I've got this galvanized layer here, and nothing's painted on it yet because I just undid that. So, but I'm going to go down to the dome layer because that's the one we're going to paint. And I'm going to hit the Command key and click on the icon here. So it will load that as a selection. Okay. And then I'm going to go up to my galvanized layer there. I'm going to hit this button here on my layers palette, add layer mask. Okay. So now when we paint in here, whoops, we don't want to be in the layer mask, okay? Because I just painted in the layer mask. We want to click here. Now we can paint there, okay? Now what we're going to do is I'm going to lower the opacity down to maybe 30 and just play around here. I think we could scatter this more. So I'm going to play with scattering here. Maybe turn the pin pressure off. There we go. Yeah, I didn't like... sometimes you just got to play with these settings. I'm going to turn that off. Ooh. Not bad. Let's go back to shape dynamics and maybe lower that a little bit more. Not bad. Like I said, I'm just going to kind of do a little bit here. You don't need to go hog wild. We can also hit the Alt key, get the white. Ooh, look at that. Okay. And I think I set this to something that already starts to look like it's made out of metal. Okay. And we can make our thing a little smaller here. Maybe we'll... Oh, we don't want to do that. Let's lower the opacity. Well, let's lower the flow down to 20. Just a little bit here. Okay. So I'm going to bring the opacity down to 20 too. Just playing around with this. See, that really does a good job. Okay. Maybe raise the opacity up to 40. And I'm just picking colors off this now. And that looks good. I'm going to come over here and see what I did, because I think what I did with my galvanized dome earlier today was I made this layer to soft light. Okay, so let's do that. Let's set this to soft light and see what that looks like. There's overlay. Overlay looks really good. Okay. Or we could do soft light. It depends on what look. We'll do overlay for this one, okay? If it depends, you want the texture to be there, but you also want that shading to come through, okay? So it depends on how dark you got when you're doing this. So that's very basic, okay? And it looks good because that's how you kind of make things look like they're made out of metal, okay? And let me go and do another one here. We're going to do wood this time. Okay, and I'm going to do it on, and we can group these two things. We're going to let's do this. Let's turn it on. We'll select both these layers. We'll just make this into a group. Okay, and we'll call this galvanized dome. Okay, because you're going to be submitting your stuff, and I'm going to be looking at it. All right, so now let's go to our cylinder layer. We'll turn that off. And we're going to make a new layer above it. And, we can try just paint inside selection. We don't always have to do a layer mask, okay? But let's first select and see, if that will do us here. So we'll select that portion there, okay? Actually, it does the whole thing there. So what we got to do is get the A key. We'll select the cylinder layer. We'll hit the top button. Well, actually, you know what? Do Command D. Just do it this way. Hit that one. Load that selection. Click the top shape. And then hold down the Alt key and click this little thing here. And subtract from area. There we go. Now, and then click below so we don't have to see that. Now, we got a new layer here. We'll call it wood grain, because we're going to make this look like wood grain. And In order to get wood grain look, we're going to have to use a rake. Okay, I've already got mine loaded up here. So let me go in here, show you where. So I got my rakes already loaded up. But if you don't have these brushes, what you're going to need to do is this. You're going to need to go over to this button right here, okay, on your brushes. And instead of going legacy brushes, we're going to go get more brushes. And what it will do is it's going to take us to a page. And it takes a second to load that page. I've already got it loaded. So I don't know. Yeah, there it goes. All right, so this is the Kyle brushes. Kyle T. Webster has made these brushes, and he used to sell them separately. And these were brushes he made for himself. And also, he started selling these on Gumroad, and all these animators started buying these. And so, eventually, Photoshop bought them, you know? And so they're included in this. And look there's so many cool brushes. So we're looking for the rake brushes. We've got halftones. There they are. So you want to download this brush here, okay? And once you do that, if you're on a Mac, you can just simply double click. I think you could do that on a PC too. You know, my brushes are over here. There's my rake brushes. So anytime you want to load a brush, you just double click on it, okay? I don't have my splatter brushes loaded, I don't think. Let me come back over to my Photoshop layer. No, I don't have my splatter brushes. Are so cool. So I just loaded my splatter brushes. I already got my rakes loaded up. So under the rakes, and here's the deal. And let me close up. We've got so many brushes on here right now. That's okay. And if we want to, we can delete some. Some of these are my own personal brushes. Like I could show you how to make brushes in another tutorial. I made snowflake brushes. These are my brushes that I made for nature. My nature brushes. And I went over this in another tutorial if you watched the tutorial about doing the background. But anyway, let me go down to the rake brushes. And the problem is, they're kind of hard to see here. You know, they're hard to read. Some of them aren't bad here. I usually like to go over to, let me hit the B key so I bring up my brushes. And I usually like to go over to here to see things a little bit better. Although it's not doing a bad job over there. It's just that sometimes on these brushes, it's hard to read them on here. But there's two places you can look for brushes, okay? If you're on the brush tool, you can go over here and find a brush, okay? And so I'm going to use this Zen brush first. And what I'm going to do is, and we've got our own layer there. Right now it's angled like this. And it's also doing something weird here probably because of my shape dynamics. It's kind of cool, actually. Let's make it larger. Yeah. That's my shape dynamics on from the last time. So I'm going to take my shape dynamics off. See that? That's what the brush should look like. All right. All right. So now if I use my brush, it's going to do this. And, let's see if it'll do anything. Now, even doing that doesn't help. What we have to do is go to in your brush settings, go to brush tip shape and rotate this. So now we can go down this way, okay? And I'll hit the D key so that I got black. I'm going to lower the opacity all the way down to 20 perhaps and just kind of go down like this. And we're going to make the brush, a little small here. That's not bad. And that starts to look like wood, okay? Now, when I was doing this before, I actually had a picture loaded, and I'm going to have these uploaded on the our D2L class. So let me bring this picture in here. And I'm kind of looking at this type of wood. Okay? So I'm going to need to do some kind of variation to this. And I don't need a big variation. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and try. Well, first of all, I think that maybe I tried before I did a fine brush. So we'll see about using just a finer brush. We got a sparse brush. Okay. We'll try a sparse brush just to see. Because it's good to experiment. You know, that's what you gotta be. You just gotta have time to experiment. Let me go to my brush settings. Sorry about that, and bring this over here, and just rotate this. Rotate it. There we go. Now let's make this small. Yeah, I think I'm going to be using this for another thing I'm going to do. Let's bring it down to... So here's the deal. If I hit 20... sometimes these key... Oh, that doesn't look bad. I'm just adding a little bit more texture to it. It's still a little too even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go in and add a little bit of extra markings for this using a different brush. You know? So I like to just play around. Let's go in here. And this time, I'm going to go to my dry media brushes, which should be already preloaded with Photoshop when you open it up. We'll go to this pencil brush. Make it a little larger here. And let's just... I'm just putting in some marks. So it looks more like wood. See? Eventually you get there. And that really begins to look like wood, this wood here that I have. Don't want to go too dark. So okay, that's not bad. I can probably live with that. Let me see here. I'm thinking of going back to one of my last brushes here and see in your brushes palette here. One of the last ones I used is still there. I'm going to go to white. So I hit the X key so that pops up. I'm going to bring this up to maybe 40, and let's just see. Yeah, I'm just going to make this brush a little smaller. There we go. I'm just adding a little bit more texture in there. So that starts to give us a wood grain look, okay? And I can play with that a little bit more if I want to. But I want to look at the top. I want to make the top look like wood too. And so I've actually got some pictures here. And we'll load these up in Photoshop. And I'll load these up for our class, our D2L class. And so this is what the top of one of these would look like. You know? And if we wanted to, well, I'm looking at that before I do that. You know, if we wanted to make this a little smoother, one thing we could always do is, and I want to make sure that I've been painting out a different layer. Yes, I've been painting out a different layer. That's wonderful. Is that I can go over here and get my smudge tool or my blur tool. I'm going to use my smudge tool. And I'm just going to... Ooh, that's kind of cool. But that's not what I wanted. All right, so strength, we're going to bring it up a little bit more. And it does a little too much. It just does a little way too much there when it does that. All right, so I'm just going to use the eraser. That's the easiest thing. You know, if the smudge is not going to work, I'm going to use a round brush, a soft round brush, and I'm just going to lower the opacities down to 20 on my eraser. And now, see, that begins to look better. And I'm just looking at that. And we don't have to do too much, okay? So now let's load the top part. And I'm going to make the top part on a different layer, so it'll make it a little easier for me. And let's see here. We'll make one more layer here. We'll do... just call it top because we're going to put this all in one group here. And let me load this, okay? And we'll come over here. and load this up. Okay, and deselect by coming down here to deselect those paths. All right, make sure we're on a different layer. Let's go get our brushes, and we're going to look up here, and I'm going to look for, I like this sparse rough brush. Okay, and then there's short stuff, there's zoom. You know what? I used that other one before, but let's see what zoom looks like. All right, I got white, so I hit X. Make it larger. I'm going to make it go in the right direction in just a moment by going to our brush settings and changing this. And let's just see. Maybe it's a little too strong. I'm going to lower the opacity here to 30. And I'm just playing around with it. It's not bad. I mean, we could use that. It definitely begins to look like that. Yeah, I kind of like that. You know? It depends on the look we're going for. You know? Now, we could go get another rake brush. And, I had the sparse brush. I'm just looking through all my brushes here. We got gravel. We got brake. Let's try brake here. Let's change the direction here. Okay. Ooh, cool. I like that. I lowered it. So I'm just playing around here, okay? And it's a little dark. That's okay right now. We can play around with the layer settings, the blending mode. I'm going to go and get one more here. And I'm going to go to, let's see here. Got multicolor. I want a fine one. That's what I want. I want a fine brush. And we'll change the direction of it so it goes this way. Okay. And I'm going to set it to white. Okay. I'm going to make it a little smaller. And I'm just putting some white marks in there. Okay. Now let's play around with blending mode and see what we can get here. I'm going to go right down to overlay. Overlay's not bad. Soft light might be better. Yeah. You can always look at things. That's what I love about this. That's darker color. We can also lower the opacity too. Overlay, soft light, hard light. I kind of like soft light on that. And let's just click. And that's not bad. We can play with that a little bit more. Let me show you what I originally had. You just want to start playing around with trying to get textures. Turn this one off. And so you see, it's not much different, really. I just changed the angle. And it just doesn't matter which angle you go at with this, because it depends on how it was cut. But, I think that both of them look good. Okay, so let's go on. I'm going to do one more here. So let's add these together. I'm going to select the top, the wood grain, and the cylinder, and we'll make a new layer, and we'll call this the wooden. Uh-oh. Something just popped up there. Cylinder. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's wooden cylinder. Now, yeah, it does not look bad at all, Yeah, I like, sometimes I just like, oh, that's cool. I get it, I still get that sense of wonder when I see stuff being made. These brushes just do such an incredible job. All right, so let's go down to our cube. And for this cube, I was looking at different wood, and I kind of went a little crazy. Here's a wooden box if you want to see what this wooden box looks like. So, then I had this really rough wood grain here. Yeah, I like that. I think that's kind of what we're going for, but we might not get it completely. Because what I did with this was, let me turn this one off. and go down our wooden cube. This is what I ended up getting, okay? And it's not bad. I'm going to show you kind of how I made that. So first thing we're going to do is we'll make a new layer. We'll have new layers for each side, but do them as you do the side. So, and I'm not even going to name this one right now. So let's go over to our cube. I'll hit the A key, get this. Load that selection. Okay. And now, we're going to make sure we're on that same layer. Okay, I'm going to click down below here so we don't have to see the blue path. And I'm going to get something from in our brushes. We could use one of these breaks. This is break 1. I'm just looking here because there's so many cool brushes. Because I used something different last time, but I'm going to try this. And I'm using a white, so I'm going to be looking at that. And we could use, I'm going to lower the opacity down to 20 here. Okay. Ooh. So the brush I'm using is Break 1 under the rake brushes. It's not doing a bad job. And I'm using white on this dark background, okay? And it looks cool. We might not need to do much to that one. We're going to get into doing some of the other stuff in a moment. I'm liking that. I mean, it looks a little bit like that, but also, let me see here. I've got other wood textures to look at. You know, a bit like that maybe. I try not to go too crazy with the wood textures, just because, you know, we want the object to be and the shading to come forward most, and we just need, you know, the texturing to be a little more simple in some respects. But that's not bad. I like that. Okay, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to do another layer here and continue on. I just happened across that. The other brush I was going to show you, and I could show it to you, and we could do something with it perhaps. Is let's go to it's our concept brushes. These are Kyle brushes, and they've got so many things. You could paint clouds with these, branches. Okay. Cracks, I see, crumble. But what I'm looking for is driftwood. Okay? Driftwood's a really cool one. And I think I'm going to see about adding some driftwood to that. And mind you, the last brushes that we use are up there. So let's go and use driftwood and change our brush setting so that it rotates just a little bit. And I'm going to use black this time. And change the opacity down to, all right, so I hit the 3 key for 30, but it changed the flow. So this is good. I'm glad I brought up this brush, because some of the Kyle brushes respond differently. So if I want to lower the opacity, I have to hold down the shift key. Okay. Ooh, that's cool. Bring this over here like this. Yes. I'm fine with just that. That really does it. Okay? So now we're going to do this to the other layer. So let's make a new layer. I mean, not the other layer, but the other side. But let's make a new layer. And let's go back to our brushes. And we'll use that first brush that we used. Okay? And we'll have it set to white. And brush settings, we've got to rotate it. Okay? So if you're doing different sides, you just got to remember what brushes you're using, okay? And so, oops, I don't have that selected yet. I just went ahead and started shading. I am very tired. Okay, so let me select this side and load the selection and click down below to turn off the paths and get our brush. And yes, cool. Now, last time I did this, I had to distort, so I might not have to, but we'll see when we go to the other brush. I like that. So now let's go to our brushes, and we can use this one and change the angle. So we're using driftwood, but changing the angle down this way. Switch to black. Part of the problem with this right now is, and we can change the angle as we're doing this. But sometimes when you're putting texture on something, it's just such an extreme that we need to distort this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and this is, we'll go to our layers here, and we'll go to our selection tool. Now, we could hit Command T, but if you realize that if you do show transform options on your main selection tool here, you'll see the transform options. So you don't have to do Command T. All right. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, not the Alt key, the Command key or the Control key if you're on PC. And I'm just going to drag this so the perspective's a little bit better. Now, mind you, we're going to have to do a mask. Okay? So I just situated that so it looks more like it's on that surface a little bit better. All right? And we'll hit the return button and do Command D. But then what we're going to need to do is we're going to make a mask. So in order to make a mask, we'll just hit this button again, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go and hit the A key so we can go to our cube. Okay, we're going to select that side, load the selection. And in here, we don't want, if we do Alt-Delete, it'll hide it, okay? What we want to do is we want to load the selection and we want to inverse it. So Shift-Command-I or Shift-Control-I will select outside of there. And as you can see where the dotted lines are at, okay? So now let's do Alt-Delete and boom. It masks that, okay? Now we're going to do the top layer. And the top layer, we just got to do the same steps as before. We're going to go brush, and we're going to pick this one right here and change the angle. Okay. And then switch to white. And mind you, my opacity is all the way down to 20 there. So it's just barely putting anything on there. All right, let's switch brushes again. Okay, and this is driftwood, so let's do it this way. Okay. And let's see how that looks. Okay, that's good. But we got to load that selection. I didn't load the selection up. That's fine. With white, it didn't matter. Like I said, I'm just tired. I need to eat. And so I apologize for complaining during my tutorial. All right, there's that. Now let's do this. And we might need to do the angle. Not bad. Indeed. All right, kind of looks like wood, a little stony. And what I want to do is come in there and make some marks so it kind of cracks a little bit. All right. And we could do that either with another rake brush, or again, we could go into our brushes and maybe, I'm just thinking just to save time here, you know, we could go and get, let's see, this is a charcoal pencil, which is similar. So let me go down to this first layer here. I have to keep track of the layers we're on. Okay, that layer right there. And if we want to, we could just make a new layer for all this. And because that's the great thing about Photoshop. You can make as many layers as you need to. Procreate, you're kind of limited on that. All right, let me see here. Pressure. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, I'm just kind of splitting it here. So I'm kind of, if you see how I'm moving here. Now that starts to look better, okay? I like that. And I'm going to just kind of keep this on the same layer. So let's just load the other side up here like this. And we're going to do this, right? And I turn those blue lines off. Just so it's kind of split there a bit. Okay. And then let's go to the top layer here. I mean, not the top, well, the top selection. There we go. Oops. I selected the whole thing. Or let's load that top shape. And then back to brush. And I kind of like just, just having it stray there. Now, if we want to make it look like a kind of a chest, something that we would open, then I'm just going to load all these. Like a box that you would open. We could just make one big, strong, bold line. We'll make it a little longer here, because that's what I was thinking about. Whoops. Oops. That looks nice. I kind of like that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that gives you an idea of how to add texture to these geometric forms. So what I'm going to have you guys do is I'm going to have you adding texture to at least 3 more of the objects or the forms here. And so right now we've done 3, so you do another 3. If you want to do them all, that's great. But add different textures, okay? Add different metallic textures. I'm going to load up all these files here so you can see, and look at things. And you can kind of play around with different brushes and try to get different types of metal or different maybe rust, okay, or different types of wood, okay. Think about what your object's made out of, okay, and think about the direction, too, that it needs to go in. So this is going to be ending this tutorial. And so good luck with this. And I hope this teaches you how to shade and add texture.